Imagine standing in the middle of an Arctic forest, but not the Arctic you know today. This is 70 million years ago. No snow, no polar bears or caribou. Instead, towering conifer trees stretch endlessly across the horizon, and something massive is moving in the shadows. A Tyrannosaurus rex, weighing 8 tons and stretching more than 12 meters long, carefully steps through the cold, muddy forest floor. There is no sunlight, no sound, only darkness and the frosty breath of a top predator rising in the air. To many, this sounds impossible. T-Rex living in the Arctic? Weren't they only found in warm, subtropical regions like inland North America? Yet recent fossil discoveries have forced scientists to completely rethink that idea. Fossils of a close relative, or possibly a subspecies, of T-Rex have been discovered in northern Alaska. And that brings up one shocking question. How could a giant predator survive in a place plunged into total darkness for up to 6 months a year? To understand this, we have to go back in time to the late Cretaceous period, around 70 million years ago. Earth's climate was significantly warmer. The Arctic wasn't a frozen wasteland, but a temperate forest ecosystem. However, don't mistake it for a paradise. Even without thick snow, winters in the ancient Arctic were brutally harsh. Sunlight disappeared for months. Temperatures often dropped below freezing. Trees lost their leaves. Food became scarce. Smaller creatures either migrated south or hibernated. And in the middle of this desolate landscape, T-Rex still had to survive. Not just survive, but dominate. It remained at the top of the food chain. A hunting machine, a ruler. But that raises more questions. How did it hunt in total darkness? How did it regulate its body temperature? How did it survive through the long, silent, starving winter? One of the first clues came from fossils of another tyrannosaurid species called Nanoxaurus hoaglandii. Its name, Nanoxaurus, comes from the Inuit word for polar bear, a fitting name for a predator that ruled the prehistoric Arctic. Though smaller than T-Rex, it belonged to the same family, and scientists believe it was a cold-adapted variant of the tyrannosaur line. By studying its skull, scientists discovered that the parts of the brain responsible for smell and vision were unusually well developed. That means it may have been highly skilled at tracking prey in low light. Like a snowy owl or an Arctic wolf, Nanoxaurus could have sensed prey through subtle sounds, faint scents, and tiny movements in the dark. It didn't need light. It needed patience. It may have stood motionless for hours, waiting for an Edmontosaurus to make one wrong step. Then, when the moment came, it would strike like a living nightmare from the shadows. But hunting wasn't its only challenge. What about staying warm? Modern reptiles like crocodiles are cold-blooded. They would freeze in these conditions. If T-Rex or Nanoxaurus were cold-blooded, they wouldn't have lasted through a single Arctic winter. However, new research shows that many dinosaurs were likely warm-blooded or mesothermic, a biological middle ground between reptiles and birds. Some meat-eating dinosaurs, including members of the Tyrannosaur family, may have had feathers covering their bodies, not for flight, but for insulation. Now picture this: a giant feathered dinosaur stepping out of a cave during the heart of winter. Its breath turns into white mist in the frigid air. Each step leaves deep prints in the frozen soil. Its glowing eyes scan the silent forest. No sound, no signal, but something is moving out there. It inhales slowly, tilts its head, then disappears behind the trees like a phantom. If that image is close to reality, the Arctic T-Rex might have looked more like a monstrous bird than a scaly reptile. Its thick feathers could have protected it from the cold and helped control body heat. In addition, The possibility of social behavior, living and hunting in groups, may have helped these dinosaurs survive. While typical T-Rex is portrayed as a lone hunter, its Arctic counterpart might have relied on community for survival. Fossils of plant-eating dinosaurs like Edmontosaurus and Pachyrhinosaurus have also been found in the same area, suggesting a rich and stable food source. Even more fascinating is the idea that they didn't flee the cold. Instead of migrating south, fossil evidence shows that many Arctic dinosaurs stayed all year long. Growth patterns in their bones, nesting sites, and juvenile fossils all suggest permanent residency. They didn't just survive in the Arctic. They thrived and even raised their young there. If you've always imagined T-Rex as a mindless giant stomping across sunlit plains, it's time to think again. In the Arctic shadows, a different image appears. A patient, intelligent, terrifying predator that didn't need to roar to strike fear. It stood still among the icy trees, waiting. And when the time was right, it attacked with thunderous force. But this is only the beginning of the story. We still don't know whether T-Rex truly lived long-term in the Arctic or if these fossils belong to a unique, specialized offshoot. Did they migrate with the seasons? How did they raise their young in 6 months of darkness? And were there any creatures brave or foolish enough to challenge the T-Rex in one of the harshest environments on Earth? In the next episode, we'll explore the prehistoric Arctic food chain, the dinosaurs that lived alongside T-Rex, and how this ancient ecosystem tested the strength of the king of dinosaurs like never before. Stay with us as we uncover the darkest secrets of the Cretaceous. Imagine a gloomy forest wrapped in thick mist. There's no sunlight, no lush green, just a strange, heavy silence pressing down on everything. In this space, not everyone survives. But T-Rex was different. It didn't just survive, it ruled. The question is, to endure in a cold, lightless environment like that, what did T-Rex eat? What did the food chain look like in the Cretaceous Arctic? And what allowed this beast to adapt to conditions that seem nearly impossible? First, we have to look at the broader ecosystem of ancient Arctic life. Unlike tropical regions teeming with vegetation and herbivores year-round, the prehistoric Arctic was a battlefield of survival. Plant life only flourished in the summer, when the sun never set. But in winter, trees lost their leaves, wetlands froze, and darkness swallowed everything. Food became scarce. So how did T-Rex make it through? The answer lies in the massive herbivores that lived alongside it. In the rock layers of northern Alaska, scientists have uncovered a wealth of fossils from Edmontosaurus, a 10-meter-long duck-billed dinosaur that traveled in herds and fed on plants. There was also Pachyrhinosaurus, a thick-skulled ceratopsid that lived in large groups. These herbivores may have been T-Rex's primary prey in the summer. As they migrated through valleys and forests in search of young leaves, T-Rex likely waited in ambush, attacking the weak, the sick, or the old. But summer didn't last forever. In winter, many of these plant eaters likely retreated south or hunkered down, causing food supplies to plummet. So how did T-Rex survive for months without large prey? One popular theory is that Arctic T-Rex and predators like it changed strategies. Instead of hunting large dinosaurs, they may have scavenged more often or hunted smaller animals like lizards, primitive birds, or warm-blooded mammals. And it didn't stop there. Some believe T-Rex may have even stored food for later. Like modern snow leopards or wolves that hide kills beneath rocks or snow, T-Rex might have developed similar behavior. Imagine a T-Rex growling quietly in the snow, dragging the carcass of a massive Edmontosaurus toward a fallen tree. It lowers its head, using its snout to cover the body with cold, wet soil. Not because it fears thieves, but because it knows it will return. It doesn't hunt out of hunger. It hunts to survive the months of nothing but frost and shadow. There's even the possibility that, during the most brutal days, when everything was frozen and hope seemed gone, Rex turned to streams that hadn't completely iced over. Beneath the frigid water, small fish swam sluggishly. A T-Rex stands motionless at the edge, its breath visible in the air. Then suddenly, it dips its head and snaps up a creature that surfaced for just a second. It's no longer a proud conqueror. It's an aged warrior, seizing whatever small chance it can to stay alive. This kind of flexibility, in hunting, in feeding, in thinking, may have been what allowed T-Rex to thrive in such a punishing place. While other animals migrated or hibernated, T-Rex stayed. It fought. It waited. That wasn't recklessness. It was evolution. But survival isn't just about food. Social behavior might have played a huge role. Many people picture T-Rex as a lone predator, but fossilized tracks in Alaska tell a different story. Parallel footprints, walking in lines, steady and close, almost like a coordinated patrol. Could T-Rex have hunted and lived in groups? If so, that would have given them a major advantage. Increased hunting success, shared food, and protection for their young. Just like lions or wolves, hunting in packs comes with both risks and rewards. A solo predator might be injured or exhausted after a kill, but with group support, survival improves. Imagine, in the frigid cold of the ancient Arctic, a group of T-Rexes huddled together for warmth, guarding their young, planning their next move. No longer mindless monsters, they become strategic, organized survivors. And there's one more aspect most people don't mention: their potential adaptation to darkness. The skull of Nanoxaurus, a close relative, shows enlarged brain regions related to smell and vision. Many scientists believe Arctic T-Rex had similar sensory abilities. It didn't need light. It only needed sounds, scents, and subtle movements. A tiny twitch under a pile of leaves could be enough for T-Rex to strike. Imagine walking through a dark forest at night and suddenly feeling eyes watching you. You hear nothing. You see nothing. But your instincts scream that something is moving closer. That's what T-Rex's prey may have felt. A death that arrived before they even knew it was coming. All of this, the diet, the hunting strategies, the social structures, the sensory strengths, and even food caching, creates a full picture of how T-Rex not only survived, but ruled the Arctic. It didn't just endure the cold, it turned the cold into a weapon. While other creatures fled or slept, T-Rex stayed. It fought. It adapted. A true warrior. A symbol of natural resilience. But one final mystery remains. Did T-Rex have any enemies in this icy realm? Or was it the undisputed ruler? And what really happened to bring this Arctic dynasty to an end? In the next part, we'll explore the possible threats, environmental changes, and hidden clues behind the mysterious disappearance of T-Rex from the Arctic. Stay with us to uncover what truly ended the reign of the king in the coldest land on Earth. T-Rex survived the darkness. It hunted through the cold. It found ways to adapt to a land that seemed unfit for life. But no matter how powerful, history has proven one truth: nothing lasts forever. The king of the Arctic, T-Rex, eventually vanished. No warning, no glorious battle. One day, its footprints simply stopped appearing in the frozen mud. So, what really happened? One theory widely supported by paleontologists is that climate change caused a major collapse in the food chain. The Cretaceous Arctic was already harsh, but around 66 million years ago, the climate began shifting in silent and unforgiving ways. Imagine forests once glowing with sunlight, now buried in thick fog. The ground once covered in moss, now layered with cold, wet mud. Herbivores no longer bellowing across the trees, but disappearing one by one, leaving a sky eerily quiet. Temperatures dropped more quickly. Winters grew longer. Even the sun-soaked Arctic summers lost their brilliance. As plants weakened, herbivorous dinosaurs began to starve. And when prey disappears, predators have nothing left to feed on. For a giant like T-Rex, survival depended on a stable food chain. If Edmontosaurus or Pachyrhinosaurus populations collapsed, T-Rex didn't just lose its meals, it lost the future of its own kind. It couldn't live on fish forever, nor scavenge indefinitely. No matter how intelligent, patient, or sharp its senses were, T-Rex was still a living organism. It needed energy. It needed nourishment. It needed an environment it could depend on. But climate wasn't the only enemy. A more terrifying threat was approaching silently. A city-sized asteroid hurtling toward Earth at tens of thousands of kilometers per hour. Around 66 million years ago, a massive asteroid slammed into what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. The impact released energy millions of times more powerful than any atomic bomb. A towering cloud of dust and toxic gas filled the atmosphere, blocking sunlight for months, maybe even years. Temperatures plummeted. Plants couldn't photosynthesize. Ecosystems everywhere collapsed. In the Arctic, where life already clung to survival, it was the final blow. Winters stretched even longer. Summers faded. The temperature dropped like a stone. T-Rex, despite being adapted to darkness and cold, couldn't withstand a global catastrophe. With sunlight gone, food vanished. With food gone, the last T-Rexes may have turned on each other, not out of rage, but out of desperation. A fight for survival with no glory, just hunger, silence, and extinction. Some fossil evidence shows that by the end of the Cretaceous, T-Rex populations had already started to decline. Fewer juvenile remains have been found, fewer eggs, fewer nests. It suggests they were no longer reproducing successfully, perhaps because mothers couldn't find enough food to support hatchlings, or the environment had become too extreme for eggs to survive. When new generations stopped appearing, even the strongest adults were just running out the clock. Interestingly, T-Rex may not have vanished overnight. Some scientists believe a few individuals survived briefly after the asteroid hit. Like flickers of fire after a storm, they burned faintly, then died out. Not because they were hunted or wiped out by some predator, but because the world had changed beyond recognition, and there was no longer a place for them in it. Beyond the asteroid and climate, another quiet threat had begun to emerge: the rise of small mammals. After the dinosaurs disappeared, mammals would take over the Earth. But signs of this shift may have already begun in the final layers of the Cretaceous. Tiny, agile, nocturnal creatures lived underground, scavenged efficiently, and could survive in ways the dinosaurs could not. If T-Rex lived alongside them, it may have sensed something it could not fully comprehend. A new era slowly beginning beneath its feet. Picture a lone T-Rex walking through the icy forest. Its feathers are matted with mud. Its breath is heavy. There are no more herds to hunt. No calls from its kin. Just wind slicing through leafless trees. It doesn't roar. It doesn't fight. It simply walks forward, like a warrior who already knows the battle is over. And one day, its steps stop. Not because it was killed, but because the world it ruled no longer exists. Yet even in extinction, T-Rex left behind something powerful. Its bones, buried deep in the permafrost, tell the story of a creature that endured the unthinkable. From those fossils, we don't just learn about dinosaurs, we learn about life's ability to fight, adapt, and persist. T-Rex was not just a predator. It was a symbol of resilience, adaptation, and tragic glory. Proof that even the mightiest must one day bow to the forces of nature. But for that very reason, it still lives on, in our imaginations, in our dreams, and in the questions we continue to ask. In the next part, we'll explore a new mystery. If T-Rex could adapt to the Arctic, could other dinosaurs have done the same? Was the prehistoric Arctic actually a hub of evolutionary innovation? The answers await us in the next chapter. T-Rex wasn't the only creature to walk through the freezing darkness of the prehistoric Arctic. If T-Rex could adapt, it begs a bigger, bolder question. Was the ancient Arctic not a dead end for life, but actually the birthplace of a biological revolution? Could this frozen land have been nature's greatest experiment? To find answers, we must travel back about 75 million years, to a time when a strange ecosystem began forming in the Arctic. Global temperatures were far higher than today. The Arctic wasn't a frozen wasteland, but a swampy forest filled with conifers, ferns, and moss. But what made this region special wasn't just the climate. It was the light, or more accurately, the lack of it. For months each year, the Arctic plunged into complete darkness. For dinosaurs used to the rhythm of day and night, migrating north was like entering another world. No sunlight, no visual cues, no ability to rely on sight to hunt or avoid being hunted. To survive, creatures had to be more than strong. They had to be different. And what paleontologists have found here goes far beyond expectations. Not just T-Rex or Nanoxaurus. The prehistoric Arctic was home to many strange, highly adapted dinosaurs. Some herbivores seem to have developed night vision. Certain hadrosaurs had unusually large eyes and skulls with expanded rear lobes, suggesting advanced brain functions related to sound and smell. There's even evidence that many of these animals had feathers or thick skin for insulation. Most remarkably, scientists found fossilized signs of dinosaurs nesting in the Arctic. They weren't migrating. They weren't fleeing winter. They laid eggs, raised young, and lived year-round in conditions most other animals couldn't endure. This means the Arctic wasn't just a place to survive. It was a place to fully live and evolve. Imagine a group of young Edmontosaurus stumbling out of their nest under the dim glow of an autumn twilight. There's no warm sun, just a cold mist clinging to their backs. Their mother stands close, calling softly to keep them together. They're already preparing for the coming winter, where darkness isn't a danger, it's a fact of life. Some scientists even believe that these extreme conditions may have accelerated evolution. When every winter is a brutal test of survival, nature doesn't allow mistakes. The individuals with sharper eyes, keener noses, or better heat retention lived. The rest didn't. Picture a generation of young dinosaurs where only the smartest and toughest made it through their first winter. Over time, the Arctic became more than a test. It became nature's forge, refining life to perfection. And it didn't stop with dinosaurs. Arctic fossils show signs of unique evolution in reptiles, fish, and especially early birds. Some prehistoric bird fossils found here have wing and leg structures adapted for hunting in cold water, something rarely seen elsewhere at that time. The Arctic wasn't just shaping dinosaur survival, It may have laid the foundation for traits that modern birds still carry today. Then comes the big what if. If that evolutionary momentum hadn't been cut short by a global catastrophe, could the Arctic have become Earth's biological epicenter? Could the creatures living here have evolved faster, become smarter, even challenged humans for dominance? Imagine an alternate evolutionary path, one where Arctic dinosaurs didn't go extinct, but continued to adapt to a colder planet. They began building more complex nests, communicating with more elaborate sounds, learning from each other. Maybe they started storing food not just for winter, but for the group. That could have been the first step toward intelligence. Of course, this is speculation, but what's certain is that the Arctic wasn't isolated or empty. It wasn't a barren land. It was a vast stage for natural experimentation, where evolution acted swiftly, brutally, and beautifully. Today, as snow and ice cover the region, it's hard to imagine that deep beneath the ground lie the secrets of life's early experiments with adaptation. Fossils still hidden in the frozen soil may hold answers to some of our biggest questions about intelligence, emotion, and the roots of survival. If you've ever thought of the Arctic as the end of the dinosaur world, maybe it's time to think again. It wasn't the end. It might have been the beginning. And in the next part, we'll dive into one of the most controversial questions in paleontology. Did T-Rex evolve independently in the Arctic, or was it a southern invader that just managed to survive up north? In other words, was T-Rex a native Arctic species, or just a lucky outsider? The answers ahead might challenge everything we think we know. We've come a long way, uncovering how T-Rex may have survived the Arctic darkness, hunted in the cold, raised young through endless winters, and eventually vanished into extinction. But one final, burning question remains, perhaps the most controversial of all. Was the Arctic T-Rex an independently evolved lineage, separate from its southern relatives? Or was it simply a southern migrant that adapted over time? This question, seemingly simple, has sparked fierce debate across paleontological circles. One side argues that the Arctic T-Rex descended from populations in warmer regions like Montana or Alberta. During periods of global warming, animals expanded northward in search of new resources. In that process, T-Rex gradually adapted to colder climates. Traits like insulating feathers, enhanced smell, and low-light hunting weren't products of isolated evolution, but modifications of existing genetic potential. But others strongly disagree. They point to the fossils found in northern Alaska, fossils that show too many differences from the classic T-Rex of the South. Slightly smaller size, more refined skull structures, and neural evidence linked to sensory and behavioral differences. These signs hint not at mere adaptation, but at something bigger. A distinct species, perhaps not even T-Rex by strict definition, but a close cousin on a parallel evolutionary path long forgotten. If the second theory holds true, it redefines the Arctic's role in the dinosaur world. It wasn't just a battleground for survival. It was a cradle of innovation, spawning new species, pushing evolution to its limits far from the warm plains of the South. It would rewrite much of what we know about how species spread and adapted across prehistoric Earth. And yet, the truth is more complex than any fossil map can show. Bones break, layers shift, time distorts everything. A deformed skull, a twisted femur. These can spark decades of scientific disagreement. And beyond that lies the biggest challenge of all, distinguishing evolutionary divergence from environmental response. A smaller T-Rex, was it underfed or fundamentally different? A misshapen skull, was it mutation or misinterpretation? To answer that, scientists need more than fossils. They need ancient DNA, broader fossil samples, deeper anatomical reconstructions, and technology not yet invented. Until then, the debate remains open. Was the Arctic T-Rex a native species, or a southern outsider that survived where few others could? Either way, one truth is undeniable. T-Rex's survival in the Arctic is one of the most powerful testaments to life's ability to adapt. It ruled a land of darkness, cold, and scarcity, a place where nature tested every weakness. It was a living emblem of resilience, evolution, and nature's endless surprises. And maybe the most exciting part? We still don't know the full story. Layers of ancient Earth still hide untold secrets. Skeletons lie buried, waiting for discovery, and entire chapters of Earth's history remain unwritten. So, if you think you've heard everything about T-Rex, think again. The most astonishing truths might still be frozen beneath the permafrost. If you've enjoyed this journey, don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and drop a comment below. Because in the next episode, we'll explore dinosaurs that shared the world with T-Rex, but took a radically different path. Species you've never heard of, with traits that might just blow your mind.